Have you ever stopped to think about what actually happens when you press the power button on your phone? What's that secret code that brings the screen to life before you even see your apps? Well, today we're going to dive into the invisible world of firmware and software. They sound similar, sure, but one is the bedrock foundation, and the other, well, that's the house you actually live in.
Look, we've all done it, right? We use these words almost interchangeably. But knowing the real difference isn't just for tech geeks. It's actually the key to understanding how every single gadget you own really works and what its limits are. This is basically the hidden blueprint of your entire digital life.
So to really get our heads around this, let's forget about code for a minute and think about something a little more solid. Let's think about construction. We're going to imagine your device as a building project, right from the bare ground up. It's a simple analogy, trust me, but it makes everything just click. Okay, first things first, let's get a definition down. What exactly is firmware? Think of it as the ultimate translator. It's this super specialized low-level code that lets the physical hardware, the chips and circuits, have a meaningful conversation with the high-level software. Without it, they'd be speaking completely different languages. So, back to our building. Let's start with the hardware itself. You know, all the silicon chips, the processors, the guts of your device. In our analogy, this is the plot of land you just bought, along with a big pile of raw materials. You've got bricks, you've got steel. It has all the potential in the world. But right now, it's just a pile of stuff.
So what is the very first thing you do on that plot of land? You pour a concrete foundation. And that right there is the firmware. It is poured directly onto the hardware, it's fused to it. And embedded inside are all the most basic, essential instructions, kind of like the plumbing and electrical wiring that everything else is going to rely on.
All right, so our foundation is poured, it's solid. Now we can start building the rest of the house. And this is where you can really see how all the different layers stack up, from that concrete base all the way up to the comfy furniture you put inside. And here it is, the whole blueprint. Right at the bottom, you've got the hardware, our plot of land. Poured right on top of that is the firmware, that permanent foundation. Then comes the operating system, your Windows, your iOS. That's like the walls, the floors, the whole electrical grid that gives the building its structure. And finally, sitting right on top, you have the application software. That's the furniture, the paint, the decorations, all the stuff you can add, remove, and change around whenever you feel like it.
And this really highlights an absolutely crucial point. Your powerful operating system, believe it or not, almost never talks directly to the raw hardware. Why not? Well, it'd be super inefficient. Instead, it just trusts the firmware to be that go-between, to handle all the nitty-gritty, low-level instructions.
Okay, so the building analogy is great, right? But let's strip it away for just a moment and put firmware and software right next to each other for a direct comparison. This is where the differences get really clear. So here's probably the easiest way to think about it. Where do these things actually live? Well, firmware is installed at the factory on a special little chip right on the motherboard. It's basically part of the hardware itself. Software, on the other hand, that lives on your main storage, your hard drive or your SSD, and you're the one in charge. You install it, you update it, you delete it. This table breaks it all down, but check out the real story here in the updates and dependency rows. Software updates, we get those all the time, they're easy. But firmware updates are super rare and honestly, a little risky. And that's because of dependency. Firmware is custom built for one specific piece of hardware. You can't just take the firmware for a Dell motherboard and try to install it on an HP one. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't know what to do. But what about really simple gadgets, huh? Like your TV remote or your Wi-Fi router. In these cases, things get really interesting. There's no big, complex operating system, and there are no apps to install. The firmware is the whole show. It's both the foundation and the entire building, because that's all that little device needs to do its one specific job. Okay, so this has all been pretty technical, I get it. But why does any of this actually matter to you? When you're just trying to send a text or play a game, why should you care? Well, it turns out this invisible code is inside absolutely everything you use.
No, really, it's everywhere. It's not just in your computer, it's in your smartphone, your digital camera, your router, that TV remote. Heck, even your simple little USB thumb drive has firmware on it to manage how it stores your files. If a piece of hardware needs instructions, it has firmware.
Have you ever seen an alert asking you to update your router's firmware, or heard a techie talk about flashing the BIOS? It's a much bigger deal than just updating an app. Because that code is so fundamental, if something goes wrong during the update, like the power goes out, you can actually brick the device. And yeah, that means turning it into a completely useless brick. That's why we don't do it very often.
So, look, if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. Firmware is the absolute, non-negotiable first step. It is the initial spark of life for any piece of electronics. Without the correct firmware, a device is just an expensive paperweight. It's a hunk of plastic and metal that can't turn on, can't load an operating system, and definitely can't run your favorite software. It really is the secret foundation.
And all of this leaves us with one final and kind of critical question. If this foundational code is so permanent, so deeply baked into the hardware, what happens when a serious security flaw is discovered inside of it? That's a huge challenge, and it affects every single smart device you have in your home. Thanks for tuning in.